Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Queerpreneur podcast with me, your host, Sarah Taylor. How are you doing? How are you doing this week? It feels like there's a lot going on in the LGBTQ plus space right now in the world. Certainly in Europe, we have been witnessing what's going on in Poland. So they've just re-elected an anti-LGBTQ rights president. So they've re-elected them for the second time, and people in Poland are really fearful for what is going to happen, what's going to be next over there, because they've already got parts of the country that have been specified as anti-LGBT spaces, which is just madness. And they've been distributing stickers and posters. I mean, this has been going on for a while, since last year. And now they've re-elected this anti-LGBTQ plus president. So that's pretty shit. I think people in Poland are really worried and terrified for what's going to come next. I've also read that they are leaving the country and going to live other places, because they don't feel safe. And it's not surprising, and it worries me so much, because if that can happen in Poland, it can happen anywhere, basically. So we must keep fighting for LGBTQ rights and equality and safety, and, an end to the other thing, which has been highlighted this week, conversion therapy. Conversion therapy in the UK is still legal, or it's not illegal, right? And there are people carrying out this abhorrent, torturous, damaging practice. It's basically trying to cure people of being LGBTQ, right? Cure people of something that is naturally them, naturally who they are, their identity, and strip that away. Imagine how broken you would feel if you put yourself forward for that. Because some people do, because they're so struggling so much, maybe with the religious and cultural pressure on them. Or maybe they've just got that deeply held shame that means that they don't feel safe or don't feel able to be themselves. And of course, when you start trying to tell people and change people from who they truly innately are, then they're naturally going to feel broken. They're naturally going to feel wrong. And I think it can lead to so much harm, so much damage. This is basically putting lives at risk. This is basically making people ill, in terms of mental health and well-being. And things like suicide rates, it's just terrifying. So please, if you're listening, and I know you will, keep it on the agenda. Keep helping other people to understand how important it is that we continue to highlight and fight for equality, and for everybody to feel safe, for everybody to feel loved, for everybody to feel like they belong, and that they're equal and worthy of love and belonging. Right, so what do I want to talk about today? So today's topic is connected to all of that, and it feels like a really big one. I'm going to be talking about that shame of being gay, of that discomfort, of that sometimes feeling uncomfortable, embarrassed about our sexuality. I'm going to be highlighting some of the main reasons that LGBTQ plus people feel shame, discomfort, or embarrassment about their sexual orientation. And if this is you, I'm going to share with you some ideas and tools that can help you to heal and recover from the shame that you've probably been carrying around with you for quite some time. And if there's anyone in your life, a loved one or a friend or family member that you think would benefit from listening to this episode, then of course, please do share it with them. So I'm going to be digging into a couple of theories that are talked about and commonly cited by researchers, therapists, and organisations supporting and helping to create a more equal world for LGBTQ plus people. So I'm going to be talking about compulsory heterosexuality, sometimes called comp-het, and internalised homophobia, and how these have shaped my life and influenced how I feel about being gay, as well as many of the women that I work with and have as friends and as work colleagues and people, that I know in my life that are definitely impacted by compulsory heterosexuality and internalised homophobia. So this is a big one, but so important that we recognise and acknowledge and understand that this stuff exists and the impact that it has on LGBTQ plus people. Hey everybody, I'm Sarah Taylor and welcome to the Queerpreneur podcast. This is the place for queer women who want to start or grow their business and their straight allies, where we build community, raise awareness and create a platform to celebrate incredible women leaders, change makers and trailblazers. In every episode, my intention is to share knowledge, learning and resources that inspire you to think big, create more impact and step fully into your life and business in a way that feels authentic to you. So if you're ready to take action towards creating a more equal world for everyone, then let's get started. I remember when I first realised that I was struggling with internalised homophobia, and to be honest, when I actually understood what it was, and this was despite being out to myself for around 10 years by that point, because I'd heard the term internalised homophobia, but I didn't really think it was applicable to gay people. I thought it was something that straight people felt, because I think it feels like a contradiction. I mean, how can you be gay and homophobic? And I think that was kind of how I'd interpreted it. And now when I look back, I can see the examples that I did hear about and the stories where I read, in the media about what was called then gay bashing and how the perpetrators were often suspected as being gay themselves. And it was their own feelings of hate for themselves and in themselves that made them beat up gay people. I mean, these stories were usually about men and like groups of guys like going and beating up gay men. And that sort of thing still happens, of course. But I remember when I first started to become aware that was going on. And I think looking back, when I heard or read about these stories, it was a bit like, when the AIDS crisis hit, I just wanted to be as far away from that as possible because it scared me. It made me really sort of like anxious inside and worried for what that meant for me, because I was having these feelings of attraction for women. I was kind of realising I was gay and knowing I was gay, and I just wanted to keep away from it. I just didn't think, I wasn't able to process what was actually going on for these men that were beating up gay men. And how could that mean they were gay themselves? I think I just wasn't able to get curious about it or process it at all. I just wanted to get away from those thoughts and feelings. And of course, attacking other LGBTQ plus people is a really extreme response to internalised homophobia. But it does kind of illustrate a point in that we can dislike ourselves so much that we deny our sexuality, we repress it, and any feelings of attraction that we have for the same sex are met with invalidation, disgust, denial, anxiety, in my case, massive anxiety, and so much fear that there is something inherently wrong with us. I mean, I spent over 10 years feeling these feelings and pushing them away, feeling ashamed and embarrassed and unable to even look at any women that I developed feelings for, that I was attracted to, you know, in case they found out or somehow I could tell, you know, that I was attracted to them. It really, I mean, it sounds kind of funny, but trust me, it's not funny at all when you get a knot in your stomach and your heart is racing and you feel like, you know, you've got white noise in your head because the anxiety, that you get that real flight, fight response. And you feel like you're about to be exposed as someone who is so wrong or bad, or guilty of having bad thoughts and feelings. And please don't be disillusioned into thinking that these sorts of experiences don't happen anymore because we've got greater equality or anti-discrimination campaigns or people fighting for legal rights for LGBTQ plus people. Oh no, trust me, I work with so many women who struggle with these feelings today, right now, of all generations, of all sorts of backgrounds, many with really accepting family and friends. Feelings of shame, discomfort and embarrassment about who they are, who we are, is very much a struggle for so many gay women still today. And as with so many fears and ways of thinking and feeling and being that we humans experience, I think there's a continuum. You know, some women feel mild discomfort when they're holding their girlfriend's hand in public or thinking about kissing her or, you know, showing some sort of affection towards her or intimacy towards her that is going to be really apparent to other people that they're together and they're in a relationship. They might feel some anxiety or discomfort about that. And some women feel so ashamed of their sexuality that they struggle to even look at another woman, especially those that they might find attractive, in case they're perceived as being predatory or lusting after them or perverse or weird in some way. So, you know, they will avert their eyes. They will just do everything they can to avoid ever experiencing that feeling within themselves. And it becomes like a pattern. It becomes like a behavior. They just don't go there. And so this, my friends, you know, that is internalized homophobia. That is what it feels like. And when we hear and experience negative perceptions and prejudice towards LGBTQ plus people, and we believe that it's true about us, you know, and yeah, it makes me, you know, it brings up emotions for me because it's so painful and it's bloody awful. And no one should feel this way ever, right? So now I want to share a little bit about where internalized homophobia comes from and why so many of us might be experiencing it. So this is where compulsory heterosexuality comes in. And anyone that's been following me for a while will have heard me talk about the impact of societal norms, religious and cultural beliefs, and the fact that the whole world is basically set up for male, female, binary gender norms and straight, heterosexual, romantic and sexual relationships. Full stop, right? And compulsory heterosexuality is recognising and acknowledging that the way that our society and culture is set up forces straight onto us. It forces heterosexuality onto us because it creates a world where it feels like there are no other options. And there's an added layer that specifically affects women. And this ties in with the misogyny that means women's sexuality, roles and identity is all tied up with our relationships with men. And, you know, the messages that we see and hear growing up are about making men happy, right? And I felt that. And I know that this is changing now. I know that in many households today, women are bringing girls up in a completely different way. Thank bloody God. But certainly when I grew up, this is what I learned to believe. And it wasn't necessarily from my parents, but it was from all of the messages that I saw, all that I heard, all that I read, all that I saw on TV. And of course, today, magazines, agony aunt columns, and plenty of TV shows are focused on how women are supposed to fall in love with men, please men, both inside and outside of the bedroom. So what the hell happens if you're not attracted to men at all? When you're trained almost, like, you know, you're kind of brainwashed from childhood to be heterosexual. In my experience, you try to be attracted to men, to want to sleep with them, to want to be happy with them, to want to feel, all of the things that you see and witness other people feeling maybe and seeing and talking about. Part of you, I think, wonders if this is how it's meant to feel, like this kind of, I'm not really sure I'm into it. Well, does everyone feel like this? And I think because compulsory heterosexuality means that you have a voice in your head that says, even though I fancy women, even though I'm attracted to women, that can't be true. It can't be real. I still have to be straight and be with men. And I certainly experienced that, despite all the pull and the attraction that I was having for women in my 20s. And I came out to myself when I was 30, because in a million ways, a million tiny ways every day from the day we're born, we're taught that only relationships with the opposite sex are valid and worthy and right. And if I go back to what I was saying earlier about not realising that I had internalised homophobia myself, it wasn't until my therapist, my counsellor, kind of pointed it out to me really in a session, that the feelings and thoughts that I was describing to her about feeling uncomfortable or being fearful of being perceived by other women as predatory or inappropriate with them in some way, was that I believed that there was something wrong with me and the fact that I was gay and my sexuality. The fact that I believed and almost expected them to be thinking those things about me was my own internalised homophobia. And just in the way that homophobia exists in other people, it existed in me. And that's when the penny really dropped for me. And I started to really think about and get curious about these thoughts and feelings that I was having, and start my own personal development and healing journey around that part of me, that ashamed part of me, that part of me that didn't feel as good as, or as worthy as, or as valid as, or just felt wrong compared to my straight friends and people in my life. And for many of us, like I say, we've been feeling these feelings for sometimes our whole adult life in some form or another, unconsciously or consciously. So all of this means that our feelings and thoughts of shame or discomfort or embarrassment might take a while to dismantle, to unpick, and to heal from. And the good news is that this can be done. And I believe that this is both an individual healing and a collective global healing, a collective global need. The whole world needs to heal from believing that there is only one way to live, only one way to love and belong, and to see that all love is equal. Okay, so I know we've got a long way to go, but every person that heals and feels able to live fully of themselves, every LGBTQ plus person that lives their truth will inspire others to do the same. and change the false perceptions and the beliefs that are held about LGBTQ plus people, the ripple effect and the opportunity and the possibility here is huge. So changing perceptions, creating greater equality, enabling and empowering gay, bi, queer people to live fully as themselves, is all part of why this is so important. And also, there is a massive impact on health and well-being of internalised homophobia and the shame and the discomfort felt by LGBTQ plus people. And if you look at the research commissioned by Stonewall, the LGBTQ charity, it showed that LGBTQ people are more than twice as likely to experience depression and anxiety than the general population. And one of the other things I've noticed and I've seen in the women that I support and work with is that they struggle to have romantic or sexual relationships because of the way they feel about themselves, the way they feel about being gay. They deny themselves or prevent themselves from going there, from even thinking about having those relationships, even if it's what they truly desire and want for themselves. Basically, they deny themselves this happiness. I mean, how heartbreaking is that? One of the absolutely biggest fears faced by lesbian, gay, bisexual, trans people, queer people, is being rejected, particularly by those close to them, which is often why people don't come out or are afraid to come out. When I look back over my corporate career, and I think about the last 3 jobs that I had, so working for 3 different organisations. The first one, so the oldest role that I had, I started working there and I was still having relationships with men, still really living as a straight woman, but having attraction and feelings for other women. And then I kind of realised that I was gay before I left that company. And I told 2 people before I left, which was my boss and a really close colleague. And I only told them for about 5 years that I was in that company, knowing that I was gay. And then I went to the next role and I thought to myself, I really want to be more out. I didn't really know what that meant, but I knew I wanted to be more out in that job. And I started off by telling my team, and that was all good. And it was a lot easier to be out in a role where I was new, in an organisation that I was new. But I almost gradually went back inside the closet the longer that I worked there, because I experienced and witnessed, not personally, thank goodness, but I experienced and witnessed a culture that didn't feel inclusive. It didn't feel safe to be myself. And then in my last corporate role, before I left to work for myself, so I was there quite a few years, I remember sort of like joining, and you're working it out, I think. I think this is probably very common for people in the LGBTQ plus community. You're working the culture out. You're working out whether or not you'll be accepted, whether or not there might be any problems or issues. And I heard a few things that just made me feel like, this is not what I want to be hearing. Jokes and banter about gay people. I mean, jokes and banter about gay people is not acceptable, right? But at the time, the culture seemed to be that it was acceptable. That was okay to do that. And I think that, over time, I heard less and less of that. They had an LGBTQ staff network group, which was great, but I was almost afraid to join it because it meant then that I would possibly be outing myself at work, and I didn't feel able to do that until the last year or 2 when I was working there. And I guess what I feel now when I think back at that is I feel a bit pissed off with myself that I didn't feel able to, or confident enough, or worthy enough, I guess, or equal enough to be able to call those people out, to be able to call out that behaviour. I kept quiet and I internalised it. And I accepted the unacceptable behaviour that had upset me, that had triggered my my internalized homophobia again, I guess, my shame and discomfort about who I was. But now I wouldn't stand for that, now I wouldn't stand for that for myself or for anyone else in the LGBTQ plus community. So if you hear that shit going on in your workplace, even if you feel you can, please call it out, because it must stop. And I reckon it probably still goes on in loads of workplaces. So if only I had that time again. But I think the lesson here is that the impact of internalized homophobia meant that I wasn't equal to, I felt I wasn't equal to, or as worthy as other colleagues. So I shrank myself and I didn't feel able to speak out about these things that were happening on probably quite a regular basis, not necessarily in my area of the office, but it was a massive organisation. So a variety of places, probably this kind of thing was going on. And I know that I wasn't alone in these thoughts and these feelings and these fears about the workplace. And it still goes on today. It still exists in terms of people not feeling safe to be out at work. There was a survey conducted by Vodafone International and Out Now in 2018, and they surveyed over 3,000 LGBT plus young people across 15 countries and multiple industries. So these were 18 to 25-year-olds. And more than half of these employees were not out at work because they feared discrimination. And 41% of them went back in the closet when they started their first job. I mean, come on, this is 18 to 25-year-olds. Anyone that says young people have it, feel easier and feel happier and feel safer. This is evidence that that's just not the case. So all of this affects our capability and our capacity to express our truth, to be fully ourselves, to follow our heart, to live our purpose. The things that I talk about every bloody week in this podcast, it might feel like. But it's so important to find joy in our lives, to find joy in ourselves, and to share that with the world. We have brilliant ideas, business ideas, passion projects, dreams and goals that we want to achieve. And I know if you're listening to this podcast, then you also want to make a bigger contribution. You also want to create powerful change in the world for good. And if we are feeling all of this bloody stuff around who we are and feeling not good enough and ashamed of that and like it's not right or wrong, it's wrong in some way, it does hold us back. It is going to shrink us. So supporting yourself with your personal development and on your healing journey, and I'm sure a lot of you will already be spending some time, maybe each day, maybe each week on this, is so important. And today I want to share with you 4 approaches that I have used personally to support myself in healing my own shame around my sexuality, and that I use with my clients to support and help my clients too. So the first practice I want to invite you to do is to acknowledge and accept your fears and self-judgments about being gay or bi or queer. Why does it matter? Well, it matters because until we can really understand this part of ourselves, the fact that we have these feelings, we have these thoughts, and what they are, what are the thoughts and the feelings that you're experiencing, then we can't start to learn and appreciate and love all of the parts of who we are, including the gay part. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment, but I really like this quote by Sheryl Sandberg. What she says is that we can't change what we're not aware of. And once we're aware, we cannot help but change. So powerful and so true. So rather than pushing down, avoiding or numbing out those difficult thoughts and feelings, and that could, this applies to anything. But for this podcast, we're talking about around our sexuality. But those difficult thoughts and feelings that we try and escape, and I'm sure that, I think it's a human thing. I think it's what we do. And we try and escape them, through alcohol, maybe through, binge watching Netflix, through eating comfort foods, whatever it is that we can kind of avoid going there. We do it because who would want to go there? Who would choose to go there? But actually, that's what I'm asking you to do, is to go there and understand what those thoughts and feelings are. However, I guess it's really worth me saying that if it feels really difficult and painful, if you're sort of starting to tap into trauma, then do make sure that you've got the right support, whether that's through a therapist or a counsellor or a coach, somebody that is able to support you through that process. And of course, there's lots of online resources as well. There's lots of books and podcasts that can support you too. So yeah, really take good care with this stuff. And, even just like a few minutes, if that feels enough, then a few minutes is great. Take baby steps with it too, I guess, which is what I say about most things that are difficult. This is not going to change overnight, and we shouldn't have that expectation of ourselves, I don't think. Yeah, so rather than pushing it down, avoiding it or numbing it out, allow it to be. And be curious about the thoughts and the feelings that you're having. And always practice this with self-compassion and gentle awareness. Personally, I love journaling. I think journaling is a great tool to help you explore this. And like I said earlier, if you need extra support, seek that out. And support yourself too with self-care practices. And that can be whatever works for you. Getting out into nature, exercising maybe, taking time out just to quietly on your own to read or listen to music, having a soothing bath. All of these things help to calm the nervous system and restore that sense of balance within you so that you can, be resilient and be okay with this process that you're going through. When we can start to see the things that we're telling ourselves are not true, that they're just societal, cultural, religious, bullshit norms, basically, that have been imposed on us and everyone around us, we can start to see that we can believe a more true version of who we are. That who we are and who we love is okay. It's just as normal as straight. We can start to practice this new way of thinking, little by little, to help ourselves let go of these untrue narratives about our sexuality, right? And if you're finding it hard right now to accept and love all of you, or any of what I've been speaking about in this episode is resonating, then I have a freebie that could be just what you need. So the link to that is in the show notes. It's a journaling exercise that I've created just for you if this is something you're struggling with. It's called Embrace Your Sexuality and Empower Your Life, right? The link's in the show notes, so go and grab it after you've finished listening to the podcast. Okay, so let's go on to practice number 2. So the second thing I want to invite you to explore is connecting with other gay people, connecting with other LGBTQ plus people. The power of this, of sharing stories, of hearing about their experiences and getting support from each other is so incredible. I remember the first time I talked to another gay woman about what I was feeling and experiencing. So this was like 25 years ago, right? And oh my God, it was like such a weight had been lifted. I felt so relieved and instantly better about who I was. I've been carrying around this anxiety and these worries and this sort of confusion. I spent quite a long time feeling very confused about my sexuality for so long. And when I started to tell her and talk to her about it, bit by bit, it wasn't like all at once, and realised that I could trust her and that she understood me. It was so good to be able to talk to somebody, and I felt less alone. It was, really, really made a massive difference. And now, of course, 25 years later, there are places, and it doesn't have to be bars and things like that. There's lots of groups for LGBTQ plus people. There's organisations, why don't I say it like that? There's organisations that offer, workshops and events. I work for a LGBTQ plus charity, and we have celebration events, and everyone's invited. And it's a great way to meet people and network with people without any sort of pressure. And I think Meetup as well is a good option too. There's lots of, certainly near Brighton where I live, which I know is, a very gay kind of area. But there are meetup groups that, walking groups, sports groups. Have a look, see what's in your area, or if you're able to travel and give it a go, And I think those sorts of groups are great because there isn't that sort of pressure of everyone's out to kind of find a partner type feeling, unless that's what you want, of course. So that is number 2. Connect with other LGBTQ plus people. And then the third thing is to explore and enjoy all of the gay culture and arts. And I think with so many incredible, creative and brilliant people in the LGBTQ plus community. And I love it. I love the fact that they are expressing all of that incredible creativity in such a brilliant, powerful way. And it feels like, really positive expression of LGBTQ culture, whatever that is. We could have a whole podcast episode on that. But you get what I mean, I hope. And the fourth thing, probably in some ways the most important, is to really remember and connect with the truth. The truth is that LGBTQ plus love is natural and worthy and valid and equal, just as much as any other love is. And as we connect more with our LGBTQ friends, we start to affirm who we are, and we start to feel prouder about being gay. And we start to enjoy it. We start to enjoy being attracted to other women. Imagine that. And it's totally, totally possible, right? So a quick recap on the 4 ways that you can start to heal yourself today. Number 1, acknowledge and accept your fears and self-judgments. Number 2, connect with other gay, bi, queer people. Number 3, explore and enjoy LGBTQ arts and culture. And number 4 is remember that LGBTQ love is as natural and worthy and valid and equal as any other love. And finally, be kind to yourself and give yourself time. Nothing is as appropriate to use that old saying as this is definitely a marathon, not a sprint. And I imagine that how you feel about being gay or bi or queer has been a long time in the making. So it's not going to heal overnight, but trust me, it will get better, I promise. And notice the changes. I think this is so important. Notice when you feel less uncomfortable, or you tell someone new about your sexuality and you enjoy the fact that they are so cool with it, or they say things to help you to know that they are so okay with it. Because people generally want us to feel accepted. They generally want you to feel accepted and loved, in my experience. So enjoy being who you are. And, I say this each week, get in touch with me for any support. I have lots of resources on my website. If you go onto my website, sarah-taylor.co.uk, I'll put the link in the show notes. On there, I've got links to podcasts and books and films and organisations that might be helpful for you. So do check those out. And I'm always here and I'm always up for a chat anytime. So all you need to do is message me over at Sarah Taylor Coaching on Instagram, or you can find me on Facebook or LinkedIn. So I really hope that this has been useful. And if you've enjoyed this episode, do leave us a review, because the more reviews the podcast gets, the more people get to hear about it. And the more we can share this support and help people to love and accept all of who they are, right? And please keep supporting LGBTQ plus people all over the world. No freedom until we're all free, until we are all equal. This has been the Queerpreneur podcast with me, Sarah Taylor. And until next week, take really good care of yourself, and I'll catch you next time.